Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ARML preseason slash review show. This is Korak. I am joined by Harrison,
Woo! Yeah. Mr.
Steve,
B2.
Good evening, everyone.
and Tucker.
Howdy.
So we'll be going over first what happened last season, some spoilers for the new season. We had a whole bunch more interest. There will be a brand new division, a whole bunch of action. The ARML just keeps expanding. We didn't know it was going to get this big, and it just keeps growing. But any starting thoughts anyone has?
It's going to be a crazy season. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, that's every season, but new league, B3, beta league's not going on anymore. The ranks are shifting. A2's still crazy strong. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, so starting to see some patterns of people who are right on that A1, A2 line who kind of go up and then run into an A1 buzzsaw and get A2 and promote back. And you're going to see similar things. People are starting to get around to their own levels. That this is one of the problems we had in the inaugural Beta League season is with one season, 20 games, because in a Beta League, you don't play that last session, 20 games determine where you are. We're starting to sift out where people are. Of course, a little harder for those who have just joined later on, but we're starting to see some patterns of people that doing pretty well and some people that are managing to hold their own. But I think to it, last season we had a B3 beta league. We had so many people. We didn't just have one bottom division. We had two. It was a combination on two sides, one which were returning bottom division and which are new players. You do not get a in fact, we had two GPML pros in B3. One was put in the A pool, one was put in the B pool. And if we can get that pulled up. All right, so we start in B3B. Promotions were Melissa, Damien, Hanley, Wenshin, Irie, Jai, and then there were playoffs with Blaine and Garth. We'll get to that in a little bit, but you just look at these stats. The first thing that just has to jump out is a 20% spread with Melissa sitting at 27.9 win, 7.4% deal, and an average sub 3,000 feed.
Yeah, I mean, it is just those stats on the whole are absolutely monstrous. We rarely see anyone get anywhere close 1200 in the EV column, and the fact that Melissa was at 1198 and the next highest person was at 793, that's just absolutely wild.
I also
Yeah,
know the participation rate is quite low too, so she's just choosing her battles and choosing them wisely.
Mm-hmm.
A very low call rate, a little low on the reach rate, not completely out of line, but just winning every hand that Usha was involved in here. And I want to go again at that 28-22 dealing average.
I mean, again, just if people are opening up, taking those cheap hands, like maybe you have the Dora, there's some on the table, just knowing your battles, feeling free to check somebody when you know they don't got anything to back it up.
Also, 0 last place should be pointed out for Melissa there. A plus 310 is over double second place's score.
And again, this is in 20 games. That means averaging over plus 15 per game. Also, to matching that same deal-in rate, Jai just barely got enough to get in, but that would send to B season with that 7.4% deal-in rate. Dealt in fairly expensively, but got enough wins. Even with that 18.8% win rate was enough because those average wins were pretty good.
Yeah, 5,300 definitely pretty good average win, and even with that lower percent, was able to factor it out. Although, I think if you deal in slightly more as Jai, you're on the chopping block for last season.
Well, and as we mentioned, there were some playoffs. Blaine and Garth, of course, being one of the GPL pros that joined us last season, started off really strong, kind of flattened off there a bit, but got into the playoff spot. We'll get back there in a minute. But I mean, the 18.2% dealing rate, that was the I'm going to push and I'm going to beat you with efficiency, and ended up with a pretty high winning percentage with that 24.4. But dealing in that much did hurt Garth quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely kept Garth from being able to secure a full guaranteed spot in the upper division. You can also see a part of that I am going to whack you with my efficiency style, even just in the rankings. 6 firsts, 7 seconds, 0 thirds, and 7 lasts. Like, that is very pushy. Like, I am going to try and win my points, and if I'm in third, I'm trying to climb up to the positives, or am going to die doing so.
And another name that people were talking about preseason, Takahiro, our Penguin Knight, has been around for quite a while. You see that 793 EV, which is second in the division, and that just wasn't good enough. Shows the deep level of competition in B3B here. The numbers there look solid. 10% deal-in rate, 21% win rate, good separation between average and deal-in, just some unfortunate score distributions.
Yeah, when you look at that line and you tell me that it's not promoting, you really have to wonder what the situations Taka ran into were, because I mean, if you're winning big hands often enough and you're not dealing in, even if you're dealing in a little expensively, and 44-3 isn't horrible, like it just comes down to kind of like what happened with Garth. You need to mitigate your losses and you need to win at slightly more opportune times. Maybe too many negative seconds, not enough positive thirds can really hurt you. They add up over a season.
Something we talked about in previous seasons is those participation rates sometimes were 70, and here we see one at 77.4% there with Nicholas near the bottom. But especially in the top half, you're just not seeing the wild play we kind of saw a lot of the previous season back in fall of 2022, but just efficient play. And that seems to be how everything is here, is just build your hands, win a lot, and run the score up.
What do you guys say we go on to B3A now, right? Because that's only half of the B3 league for last season. Again, that beta league splits it up in half, makes them smaller. And while there's so much going on with B3B, there's still so much that went on with B3A. Some absolutely insane competitors. We had Alon, who was again top 32 WRC finalist, right? Something like that.
Yes, Kayla ended up winning the division. Also, as in the top 8 in the recent DC Open. So, congratulations on that. Viet, of course, a newer name, but the newest Ho-Oh player in the US, having hit 7-Dan fairly recently, I believe, and did enough to guarantee that position in the top 3. Galhan, Eric, and Jake also rounding up the guaranteed promotion spots. And you see those numbers next to Quinn and Emily, they were in a playoff as well. So they did not get those secured positions, even with those ridiculous win rates at 27% and 28.1%. So just winning hands wasn't enough. This was a very cutthroat division.
Yeah, and
What stands out
15
to me there is that Emily's deal-in is higher than the win, and you usually don't see that. It's the other way around if you're in the upper half, right? So
generally, yes, it means you have to make it up in order to stay positive. If you're dealing in, if the wins you're getting are lower than the deal-ins you're making, normally it's the opposite way, because the sumo Yaku itself, Menzen Sumo, will manage to boost the natural score of a win compared to a deal-in. A deal-in cannot, by rule, have a Menzen Sumo Yaku. But even then, with that 28.1% deal win rate, wasn't enough. And we can see through this, basically the same type of thing. Now, one difference between this division and what we saw in B3B is you have a lot of people dealing into fairly expensive hands and still doing quite well here because of those average wins in B3A.
Yeah, and you had mentioned how deep this this pool was and how many recognizable names there are. And the recognizable names go all the way towards the bottom here. Jin, who is already mentioned is another JPML pro, hit a lot of unfortunate runs in those 20 games and ended up in the playoff spot to decide whether she would stay in B3 or end up in the new C1 division that will be introduced this next year. And Jessa, who was 15th there, was one of the qualifiers for the IORMC American team, this most recent international online Ricci Mahjong competition. So a couple more recognizable names there. They just kind of go all the way from the top to the bottom here. It was really brutal.
All right. I think we do have a clip for this division.
That
Watch this
two-month's
out
gotta
right
come out of
now.
Kayla's hand.
Okay, does not come out just yet. I mean, even if you're Kayla, you're perfectly fine going into this. This is great for you.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no Dora there.
Oh, and that 3 may stop it from happening, though. I think 3-pin's the cut now. You're just going for a regular hand. Oh, it could be Yakuman. Double
Oh, my
Yakuman death by
goodness.
right. And that would have done it. Oh,
and
and
now
so sad. And then
Muritan.
Muritan.
And there's a two-month sumo!
Oh my god.
That
Watch this
two-month's
come out
gotta
right
come out of
now.
Kayla's hand.
I mean, that's a legendary hand, right? Has there ever been a double Yakuman that close in Armel?
No, this is the closest one we've had. And I think I was calling this game, and I was a little questioning on that West that it came out in the first place, but I certainly didn't expect it to grade to this level. And just so unfortunate there, just couldn't pull it all together. And so tragic. The one Han ends the entirety of it. But of course, that win there for Jocelyn would have been as a dealer double Yakuman, 96,000 had it come in.
I mean,
Boy,
and
that
even
shakes up a division quickly.
yeah, and not just the West. Even like there were 2 North discarded before that. This whole hand was just full of so much regret, but it was still beautiful to see come together.
Yeah, that's a hand you just wow. And it just ended by that simple Sonshiku, the one Han shuts it down. So in the books, it's just the one Han, but a bit tragic. Let's head back to the stat for this division. And we didn't even talk about it, but Isabella down there in 14th with that 26% win rate. Just winning wasn't good enough. We see this over and over. Quinn, Emily, Miguel, and Isabella. So 4 of the top 5 win rates were either in the playoff or just didn't even have a chance to promote. Kayla was the only one who got it together, and that was largely because of that 11.2% deal in and pretty solid EV overall.
Yeah, I mean, really, the big deciding factor in this division really seemed to be deal-in rate. Like, whereas a lot of the time, deal-in rate, it has a correlation with the top of most of the divisions, but here it is heavy on the top half. Like all of the red, which is just the, Excel conditional formatting saying these are the best numbers out of this particular range. All of the red is in the guaranteed to promote, except for a couple of very faint blemishes down the way, like the 10.8 for Michael V in 9th.
All right, let's head to B2.
Oh wait, don't we gotta talk about the playoff
we
results?
have a playoff, yeah. So we had both of our pros manage to qualify for playoffs, but they were different ones. I don't think I have a graphic for it, but so what ended up happening was Garth did not manage to make it out, and unfortunately, neither did Jen. But because there were enough hiatuses, Jen did manage to survive and will be in the same division in B3 again this season.
Yeah,
But the
it was,
final results there gets the free pass. But the final results were Quinn and Blaine got out of B3A's playoff. Garth and Emily did not. On the lower end, it was Quincy and Leslie who were guaranteed to stay in, and Jen and Aaron did manage to get the free passes because there were some late hiatuses which managed to save those spots. So with that, now we can head to B2. All right, who's that Harrison person I see up there?
Looks good. Looks good. I mean, let me tell you, the weather up there was fantastic. A very nice, calm breeze. Not a calm breeze; it was a raging wind. But yeah, B2 last season, crazy division, ton of strong players. And the fight for first, if you weren't following, I was apparently the only one who really cared, so I feel really great getting first. But I was down like 50, I think, points going into the last session, something like that, or I was like right on the chopping block. I think I was just ahead going into that last session, was able to pass, but it was crazy. So many strong players. I was able to just barely get the highest EV. Had a very good win rate. I got a couple really lucky like dealer Baimons with Chinitsus that were like first row. I was playing really aggressive, which was working really well. And I think that's something that kind of transfers for the top of the line or the top of that B2. I think a lot of the players were winning a lot and also pretty heavy in participation. I being one of the most passive for the promoters to get into B2 or to get into B1.
The low deal-in rate and low deal-in average are certainly notable for iThere, and still keeping a 24.4% win is incredible when you're dealing in less than 11% of the time and for cheap hands when you do deal in.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's actually a couple other extended spots too that this graphic doesn't show, right? I think everybody up to, I think top 8, right? Brian T and up got promoted in. Maybe even actually a little bit above that. Is Travis S in B1 this season?
Travis S will be in B1 this season, yes.
Okay, yeah. So we got a little bit down the line.
Yeah, all the people with positives managed to promote out of B2. This is something we talk about all the time. There will be hiatuses. When you join an ARML, you're not dedicated to ARML. You can take a season off to deal with your life, to fix things. The Mahjong will always be here, but you take care of yourself. Well, the other side of that is that, I mean, there are extra promotion spots, especially in those lower ranks. The idea is you are given chances to climb quickly. So we can look at some of the rest of these stats. And of course, we talked about Harrison, but something Harrison said that jumping out at me is there's a lot of aggression. And I kind of agree. There are a lot more of these high 50, low 60% participation rates in this division. Some of the other ones, especially near the top, we're seeing 42, 44% participation rates. But here, other than a couple, they're all sitting around that 55 to 60 range. People are definitely get in there. You see these 40% call rates all over. So, and everyone's kind of sitting around that 20% reach rate, which seems to be a pretty standard number across all the divisions. Now, I guess we haven't even explained some of these numbers yet. So, as normal, we will go over those for a bit. EV is kind of our own internal stat. Expected value, which is your win percentage times your win average, minus your deal in percentage times your deal in average. And it's not the only stat that's out there, but it's very strongly correlated with your end results. Because obviously, if you're winning hands and you're not dealing in, you tend to do well in this game. Amazing how that works. And the second one is the participation rate is just the sum of the call and reach rate. Gives you a basic idea of how aggressive a player is, how involved a player is, whether someone's trying to drive the table.
Yeah, and I didn't actually notice this until I think like the mid-season show for last season, but those formulas are actually also explained in the sheet if you happen to be very clever and look at them, which I obviously am not, but you can see there with the win average being close to together, multiplying, and then that hyphen is actually a subtraction sign, and there's even the equals at the end of the formula. So, like, just a little fun fact there at the wonderful spreadsheet building of Aaron Lida.
One
I
thing,
think anytime you see an outlier too with the EV kind of going from high to low, you just have to look at it, and it screams to me that that player had either good placement, they were able to sneak out a placement even though they were dealing in or something. I see that with Stanley's EV especially. It jumps out at me like he's in the middle, but it's 247.
yeah, Stanley had a really nice latter half of the season too, because Stanley was like negative 100 plus for a while, and then I think in even just session like 6 alone, jumped up almost 100 points and had a
Yeah.
good session 5.
And the same thing applies at the bottom for Christine, who was just barely out of the demotion range at 582, which is one of the top EVs in B2. But you look at the placement and those 10 thirds, all
Yeah.
of those thirds that could have been seconds really makes a huge difference to your score. And at the end of the day, no matter if you're winning or losing, it's the placement at the end of the game which is going to determine the score that really matters, that net plus or minus that ends up getting put next to your name here.
Yeah, speaking more to that too, you look at the top of, you look at the top of B2 and like the story of placements is weird. I have a worse record than the next 2, almost 3 players below me. But every game I had a bunch of first where everybody else was knocked below starting value. I got the extra UMA. I had a lot of seconds that were pretty good. I had some thirds even that were positive. And it's all those little like just kind of focusing on your starting value and kind of anchoring that can really show positive trends for score, as you can see with my worst record, but still being point wise above a couple other players.
Okay, I think we have a couple clips from B2, so we'll take a look at those.
No, what? Wait, is that reach Tanyao? You get to 40 foo, so I think you still need sumo, right? I don't
You
think
need either
240 is
sumo
enough.
or you need an Ura.
I hate waiting on Ura personally. I'm not an Ura fan, an Ura enjoyer. Especially in a situation like this, I'd much rather get sumo. Oh, and would have had, I think, a chimney, right? They would have waited 2 turns? Or would have had a Shavo?
Well, if they waited a turn, it would have been a Shavo 4
Oh!
Oh my god!
That's where the extra came from! No!
And you just see that. A Khan pulls in everything, pulls the last 3 mon out of the wall, was sitting in that dead wall in the first Rinshun position, and that's the comeback. A gigantic win there. And I mean, you can't ask for much more there for Chris.
Unreal. +1 from Rinchan. Or Rinchan, you love to see it.
And Stanley's got to be sitting there and in currently at the bottom of the division when this game happened, being like, really? This
Yeah,
is my
like
lot in
that's what
life.
happened. Unreal.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. Is the Ura hit with the extra? No Ura. So
No,
that
Ura doesn't need
Rinchan was
majority of
huge.
Mongon. Yeah.
Yeah,
And of course,
the
with the
Fu-
Rinshun,
it's
then
the
it's the extra
Fu.
Yaku. Right.
The foo from the Oncon makes it a Mongon regardless at that point.
Oh yeah, good point.
All right. And if that wasn't enough, we have a second clip. I think this one's even more explosive.
And we've
You
got
can take a guess what it is,
So
just taking a look at it right now.
That's what we're looking at.
Oh, hold on, Chong. You can work in a 3 or it can work in a 1 mon. Has to push a 6 though. That's a
jeez.
brave push.
This
Oh,
looks like
jeez.
really bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Fuji.
Okay. Oh, there's a south. Oh, there's another south.
Where is there's still 2 1-months left? Yeah, there's
Still
still
2
2
months.
left. Oh, yes, sumo. Oh my god.
What a madman. What a man. You know what? Shame on us for doubting. Shame on us. What's the point in thinking about what you're discarding when you're just gonna hit the Kokushi?
And we've got, I'm going to say off the bat, I remember commentating that when I see my name on the screen, and I hated that Ricci. I hated it.
Okay, you know what? I can't disagree more. I'm a huge Ricci enjoyer on the Kokushi push, just because sometimes you gotta let people know. You know, sometimes you gotta let them know I'm Tenpai. You draw any terminal or honor, you better watch yourself. You better
I'm
slow your
here with
roll.
Steve. I want them to push those terminals. I just rather sit here and say, "Oh, 1-mon's perfectly safe. Don't worry about that at all."
Yeah,
if you
you're
have a
on your
13
own,
orphans
Harrison.
discard, if you have a 13 orphans discard pile, it looks suspect. And if you suddenly Ricci in the middle of it, I'm going to be thinking, is this Kokushi or is it Cheetoy? It's one or the
yeah,
other.
those are.
Really.
It's going to be one of those two with the irregular discards like that. I mean, there are some very rare cases where
But
it's like
I'm not going to
June, but yeah.
suddenly think 4 mons out. Let's push a 1-mon Suji. That's not with that pawn. No way.
Well, yeah, but then you get a terminal or honor in somebody's hand who's about to push and is in Tenpai. Then all of a sudden they're thinking backing off when they get a random terminal or honor. They draw like another south and they're going, hold on a second, maybe I can't push this. Maybe I gotta stop my hand right now because they're looking for this.
Well, then there's the obvious solution to this problem, and that's just sumo, which is what we see here.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's definitely a nice win there for Henry. And let's head back to the stats.
So now we got B1, right?
Yeah, B1. Promotions are Sarah, Alfred, Eric, Shane, Sam, Leon, and Jonathan. Julian was pretty close to the cut line for a long time there. Michael made a push towards the end, was sitting in the negatives in the last session. You see that 4-10, 10-second place, just couldn't close out those games in the end. Known as a very aggressive player. You see that with the 44.7% call rate, very active player. But the winner in this division is Sarah, who just kind of ran away with it. 6,000 win average and a 22.2% win rate. Just one big hand after big hand after big hand. I mean, that's how you're going to get into A2.
And it is worth pointing out, since you mentioned Julian there, Julian did end up, because of the hiatuses, still moving up to A2. Mike, however, in 9th did not.
And similarly, you see kind of the same thing where a lot of those people with that low deal-in rate did well, but it's much less strongly correlated in B1. You see there Aldwin, or Q as he's been known in the community forever, and Sichuan, they also had 10% deal-in rates, but just couldn't put the hands together to take advantage of it.
Well, you say couldn't put the hands together, but I mean, almost a 21% win rate with over 5K average win here. Like, that's really not bad. The EV is really good. It kind of comes down to the placement once again.
Yeah, all wins comes out as being like the 10% delta between the two. The EV looks fine. The placement just happened to be unfortunate. There could be negative seconds in there as well. There's only 3, but who knows? And then with Sichuan, you just see the 16% win rate is just not high enough. It is, as we'll see later when we get to me, it is not high enough, and you have to do whatever you can to scrape things together. And if you're only winning that number of hands, it's just not gonna do it. It's unfortunate, and you just have to roll with it. And we see Kevin here with 17-7 surviving with a similarly low win rate. So it's a matter of how you play it.
Right. And Alfred, of course, was a late joiner and I believe has promoted every season. Very solid play. 25% win rate, 10% deal rate, a really low deal at average. Is that a 900 lower than anyone else in the division? That's amazing play.
Yeah, almost 900 lower. I think exactly like 700.
No, there is a 3857 down there for Edwin, but other than that, yeah, just really low deal in rates and won plenty of hands. So that is definitely a way to promote. Of course, Eric won the inaugural Beta League, was in A1 for a while there, demoted twice, just missed the cut 2 different times. Will have a chance again in A2 next season. So congratulations, Eric, for fighting back there. And Jonathan, of course, subbed in A1 in one of the earlier seasons. I believe that was in spring, and will have a chance to move up to A2 now and play for a chance for A1 this season.
And it's been fun watching Jonathan as well, because there's a lot of very obvious growth in Jonathan's game from that first season where they were subbing in A1 and kind of getting hit a little bit with it, which, you know, I did too when I was in A1. So I'm not harshing Jonathan's vibe there. A1's a rough place to be. But seeing Jonathan take so many negatives in that first season and now is on his own way to climbing up and earning it and being a better player and really ready for it is really neat to watch.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of people, especially when we get to when we get to the current B1 season that we'll be going into. You're going to see a lot of familiar names. B1 is going to be crazy. But we have a clip for B1.
I think we even got 2.
Let's see.
What is this?
Here. Let's go.
Whoa,
This is
whoa,
absurd.
Whoa. Let's calm
Hatsu,
down.
Dora, Anko, 2 Ankos in hand, ready-made
That's
Honitsu.
the Dora 2. Oh my god, we got the East.
Alright, this is the most insane hype I've seen in about a year.
And this is pretty good. I mean, we're just
draws keep
naturally
coming.
playing efficiency. We're gonna go towards Honitsu at minimum. Oh my god, already Tenpai across.
Oh, Albert, don't shut this down. Please, we want to see this win.
Stop it. Oh no. Oh, that 9P looks so bad in everybody's hands. It comes out. I think someone's just dropping it. You can even see Aldwin drop it. That would be so
It's
tilting.
Tenpai. And the 3-pin leaves Rachel's hand. Oh my goodness, this is the dirtiest hand I've ever seen. Sanako, Hatsu, Honitsu, Dora 3, Baimon as dealer.
Oh,
What could you do? What could you do?
yeah.
Oh, what is this?
And Rachel,
That-
just like that, saw all of her points vaporize on turn 4. I don't know what else you can do.
Yeah, some hands just play themselves and
Yeah.
eventually get rewarded. That's not a bad discard by Rachel. That's just Q running absolutely hot. And Q ended up needing those points. But that's how you ended up with that positive EV sitting, around 650? Pretty strong result. But win hands like this, that'll help.
I mean, what makes this even more disgusting is that Alfred was actually Tenpai 2 turns before Q was. It's just the 3-pin came out before the 4-mon or the 9-pin did.
Yeah, 9P comes into like half of the table's hands and it's getting thrown out even before that 3P, I think. Oh, it's so disgusting. What a bad beat for Rachel.
Remember, everyone, Mahjong's completely skill-based. There's no luck involved.
Of course.
I mean, that hand honestly that hand is probably one of the biggest factors that takes Rachel out of contention for promoting into A2. Like, one hand obviously doesn't decide everything. There's a whole season. But before this hand, Rachel is sitting in that 9th spot, which it would end up being 1 out of the promotion zone. And Rachel's very capable of winning big hands and running a table herself. But when you take a massive negative like this and have to try and fight back from it, it puts you in a very vulnerable position.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we have a second clip. Here we go.
I mean, it's 1 versus 0 at this point. It's just a matter of, can we defend? There's a 1-pin. Do we switch?
Just 4-so or 5-so?
Yes. I'm so tonky, and this still has 2 in the wall.
So this is an improvement.
It's an improvement to Tonki. Unbelievable.
I mean, if
It's
you're
Sam
on
Zumo.
oh, there it is, the sumo! Oh my god!
Yeah.
Haku
Dora 7. I mean, it's 1 versus 0 at this point. It's
Part of what makes this one even sillier is the fact that in this Hanchan, like 3 different 5-so Tonkis won. Like, There were
I
three
remember
different
that,
times when 5-so was a pair way and then ended up being like a huge win. And this actually might have even been the first one.
It was a hot tile, that Hanchan, for sure. I mean,
And
how
I know,
much
I
of
know
the time
Eric
do
is
you
just a
see
very
it?
principled player. So you see the Ricci on the table. He's not going to throw the 1-so Dora into it. He chose the Nakasuji to cut. So it's not that 5-so was better. He chose the right Tonki, clearly, but I think he was going to not deal in as well.
I mean, how much of the time do you see that too? Where like obviously Eric sees and thinks the Ryanmen's better, but in actuality, Tonki waiting had more tiles in the wall than the Ryanmen. Everybody else had all the pieces in their hands.
You see the 3-6-6-6 on the left and the
All
3-3-6
all sixes
across the
held.
way. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely dead. Switches the Tonki, hits it, and jackpot. So congratulations to Eric on that win. That definitely was one of the hands that vaulted him back to A2. I think we can head back to the stats now.
There's the big one, A2. This was going into the season. We couldn't believe how stacked it was. Like we're used to A1 being stacked, right? And then this was the season where we said, wow, every single player in A2 is crazy. And they all have to play each other, and 5 have to demote and 5 have to promote, right? And I mean, you even see that to start up. Just Huang, like the champion of the first annual championship of Armel, the champion of the whole thing after all the seasons, just barely in the chopping block, 9 points. And now in B1 this season, it's crazy the amount of competition in this league now.
And you see just all sorts of different stats. You see the highlighted red win percentage is kind of spread out. The win average is pretty spread out. The deal in average is pretty spread out. The only thing you see a bit of a corollary on is that deal in rate. But then you look at the top two, a 16.6 deal in rate and a 20.7 deal in rate, and that didn't slow them down.
I can't believe Joe has that high a dealing rate. That is insane.
I wish them luck in A1 because that will get punished.
Yes, actually, that ended up being 6 promotions out of A2 because there was an extra hiatus in A1, which we'll get to in a bit. But Joshua, Joe, Matthew, Vincent, Andres, and Andrew will be heading to A1. And it just, you look at the numbers here, and I'm trying to see something that jumps out. And what jumps out to me is they're winning a lot more hands with a 22.5% league average, division average. Their average value is about the same, but look at the deal-in rate. This is a crazy push division with 15.2% average deal-in rate. The EU is a little low, but you take hands and you go for it. And that's what you saw, was just unbridled aggression.
It should be noted that Vince actually demoted from A1 a season ago, so he's returning, so welcome back.
I mean, one of the things I want to point out too is the participation, because how often do you see it where the player at the top has the highest participation for that league? And then you look at the player who's, a percentage off, a single percentage lower, and they're all the way at the bottom. Both just playing almost every hand, 70% of the time. And just the duality of where you can end up from that play style is crazy to me.
Well, as someone who plays the hyper aggressive style, it means you get a lot of coin flips, and you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. You just hope that they'll balance out in the end. Well, yeah, we haven't even talked about some of the players here. Pio with that 6,000 average win was in a position to make it to the A1 division, but took a really rough last session. And then Alex just below, similarly, a very high win average amount and a ridiculously low 34-30 deal in average. But on the corollary, you see those deal in rates, a lot of those 16s, 17s that really ended up catching up to people.
Yeah, unless
Down
you're
there.
winning 30% of the time, like Joshua, you really should probably avoid dealing in that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Well,
wild play. I'm trying to
think-
do just
I think the wisdom there is 10%, right? Be 10% apart and win and deal in. And if everyone's playing like normally and you have equal competition, you shouldn't be winning more than 25% because some will be draws. So if your dealing rate is over 15%, might want to look at how you're playing. That's my opinion.
now. There are plenty of ways to do it. The question is how passive's the rest of the table. And we see in A2, the answer is not very. They were just going for it. So the corollary is if you have a hyper aggressive table and a set of them, can you take advantage of it? We see that with Joshua, Joe, and Matthew being able to do so very effectively. But you see the numbers here, I mean, honestly, all the way down to Dustin in 7th weren't that separated. It was a dogfight there at the end.
Yeah, A2 was one of the funnest divisions to watch close out in session 6, especially that, I mean, the promotion line and the demotion line were tight all the way up until the final Hanchan that was played. Like people were playing for their exact spots up until the final game that was played in A2, which is why the end of the season ends up generating so much hype every 12 weeks, because you end up with divisions like this.
All right, I think we have a clip here, and it's a much more of a fun one than anything else.
Hmm.
Khan?
Oh, Khan? Khan?
Khan?
Oh, come on.
Yeesh.
Oh, that's gonna be the deal in
Don't.
here.
Man, we could have seen Aura 3. Instead, we see Aura 3.
Ura 3. Oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting Ura 3.
Man,
Predictions, let's go.
sometimes I say things.
Sometimes you say things.
Yeah, Brett there just say it's about time for an Aura 3, and sure enough, there it goes. Very expensive deal in, but a nice win there for Joshua, pulling in a Hanuman.
Yeah, it's so funny there, Brett and Leslie sounding like the seagulls from Nemo the second that the button comes up. Gone? There on par. And I mean, that's some of that explosion that I think we were talking about in A2. Just absolutely crazy aggression and huge wins. Just everybody pushing back and forth.
All right, I think that's it. We can head to A1 now. All right, first of all, we have league champion Kenyon. I mean, you just look at those stats. Kenyon was rolling, and the 329.4 was not indicative because Kenyon was a good 200 points clear of everyone about halfway through the season. Kenyon was not going to get caught, even though Aaron and Minko had some monster runs in the last couple sessions to get close.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the top 3 players combined add up to, I mean, very close to 900 here is absolutely insane in A1. Like, for 3 players to be running the table so frequently is kind of bonkers.
And as we talked about in A2, that was the crazy push division. A1 was the much more defensive one with a 13.1% deal-in rate. I think it's actually relatively high for how some of the A1 seasons are. But you just see here, so many people on these average wins, 6,000. How many are there that are at least 5,900? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people built 5,900 point average hands. And that's what you're seeing in A1 was a ton of greed, but building that value and getting it together. You see all sorts of styles. We talked about before, some of high participation rate players, Kenyon and Aaron at the top, and then Garrick and Amy near the bottom there. So all sorts of different styles. And there's weirdo Arthur guy in the middle with second highest call rate in the league and higher Ichi rate. But just it's hard to get much in terms of information. The only really correlated stat is that deal-in rate, as Steve has been talking about earlier, that if you keep that deal-in rate low, you can usually make it up, especially if when you are winning, you're winning big. And the only real exception there is Aaron with a 15.4% deal-in rate, but just won so many big hands it was enough to make a challenge for the championship.
Well, Aaron also had the lowest deal-in average. There's 5 players here below 4K, which is by far the most in any of the other divisions, which is kind of funny when you consider that the people winning those 6,000 hands had to win them off of somebody. And it's worth noting that that's one of the things that our EV statistic here actually misses, is the EV will take those sumos into account on the winning side, but not on the deal-in side. So you can actually kind of infer here, seeing all of these low deal-in averages and all of the explosive win averages, that you are getting quite a bit more sumoing in A1.
You see these numbers, people are winning hands. So the win average of 21.6 is higher than previous seasons in A1 because you're not seeing as many of those hands going to draws. People are actually hitting their hands. But something else to talk about is that winning percentage. That's something Steve and I definitely had trouble with this season. With a 19% win rate and a 17.6 for Steve.
I mean, we were talking about it. Well, we don't even know how I survived, to be honest. Like with that delta in this league, you're dead. You're basically dead. I have the lowest participation rate, tied with Beechen. I could not play any hands. They were all just garbage. And I even had one terrible game that Korak knows full well about, because I just dealt in my deal. I think I raised my deal-in rate by a good 2% in that game alone.
But
yeah,
this is
one was
where
a random win. The other was I had a double Ricci as dealer. And like, how are you going to defend against that?
But this is where the positional play becomes so much more important. I mean, the reason Steve makes it through is because you have 9 seconds and 5/3. Like, when there's a chance to turn a game even just slightly in your favor, if you're getting that tiny push, even with more lasts than firsts, the average ranking is still better than that direct mid 2.5, which was in this case enough to save you here, Steve, even with not winning very many hands.
No, this is it.
I
Steve,
pretty
you
much
weren't even
considered
that
myself
close to the
safe.
cut line.
I considered myself safe going into the last session anyway, because I think I took a -20 in the last session, but I was like, at a certain point, I was like, I don't care. I was sashikomiing. I was just ending the game as quickly as possible in the last round, because I'm like, I don't want to have some shenanigans happen. Like, I want my dealership to go away. I'm not going to win. I don't care. I want my dealership to go away. I don't want somebody to sumo a Yakuman. That's already happened twice. And so on and so forth. So yeah, it was not just positional play. You don't have the top 6, 7, whatever spots to play for in A1 after a while. So after you start to see the writing on the wall, and then if you can't get it all together, the goal is just don't demote.
Yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about A1 is you're going to have a lot of people who are just very passive. And that's actually, so we see that Nathaniel here is marked as demoted, managed to survive because there was an extra hiatus in A1. So Nathaniel did stay in A1, but Claire had a chance to take it over and was storming back, started that session, I believe, at around -177 on the very last Hanshan, won it, but didn't get quite enough points to make up the difference. And it ended up being that close. Overall, though, the other story here is Bishan, who had been in A1 from the very start, just couldn't win hands. And even when Bishan would get to Tempai, would just then deal into someone's chase and they'd hit Aura 3.
And there's just so little you can do about that sometimes. And that's part of why in the ARML, we do have such frequent movement between divisions. Like Mahjong being a game that involves a lot of luck, like bad beats are just going to happen. I mean, Eric is one of the season champions and he demoted twice. I mean, the competition is fierce and Mahjong is a very, very fickle game. So the fact that we have the opportunity to go up or down like 4 times a year is really, really nice for trying to equalize that out. And as you've said, because we've had now 5 seasons, I think, 5? Yeah. 5 seasons, that's given a lot of time for things to even out a little bit more. I mean, like, even though Claire and I have never been in the same division twice in a row. We have both either promoted or demoted every single season. We've actually gone in the exact same direction every single season, which is very funny, but like we haven't been stable, but we've always been around A2. So you have a good feel that that's about where we're at, even though we're not stable. And that's what the frequent movement is going to allow to happen here.
Oh, Mahjong's just a weird game because we talk about stability, and you can see with my own stats, the highest participation rate, I'm getting involved in basically everything that I can, even over hyper aggressive players like Amy or Garrick. And my end results in A1 have been 11th, 10th, 10th, and 10th.
And one of those 10ths was like 8 points away from demoting in the very first season.
No, I think that was the 11th. And yeah, that was the season where I got plus 0.9 as my final score. And I was the last one to stay in the division. But regardless, you just see that it's hard to stay in A1. And now we're down to 4 who have been in every A1 season because Bishan, as we can see here, did get demoted. So those 4 players are Kenyon, Max, Steve, and me. And when we get to the A1 pairings, there will be some fun matchups on that. But I don't think we have a clip specifically for A1s. Any closing thoughts about the division before we head to the new season?
It is worth mentioning that Zoo there in 4th has never demoted out of A1, but did take a hiatus. And so hasn't been a part of every A1
hiatus
season,
this season as well. So Zoo's definitely had some solid play as well.
Should also be noted for the viewers that when Korak sang 10th on the demotion line, as the ARML has grown, the size of A1 was increased from 16 up to 20. We see 21 here due to shenanigans, but its intended size is 20 and will probably stay that way for the foreseeable future.
Well, I think we have 2 hiatuses this season, so next season may also be messy, but we'll see how that works out at the very end. But now we have a brand new season to talk about. So we'll start off with a brand new division, C1. And there are some names up there that a bunch of people may not recognize and some that you might recognize, as we have a few streamers in there as well. There are a whole bunch of people that piled into the ARML from Wrath League, which is a long-term league that Wrath SS has been running. So we got a few new streamers in here.
Something I want to toss out before we get too deep into the discussion about C1 here is that we've already had our first Yakuman of this season that happened at Nathan B there that you see as a part of table 4 in that first session. Sumo to Suanko. So
At
got the
South 1 too. Halfway through.
So congratulations to Nathan getting the first Yakuman of this glorious spring season we've just begun.
So of course we have Mr. McMead will be in this division, Curry will be in this division. Of course, he'll be joined by some others who've been here for a while, such as Overlord Whale and Navitas. So we're to see some expansion, maybe some more visibility as a result of that. Any matchups in C1 that look particularly enticing?
To be clear, Korak is naming all of the streamers. Navitas and Overlord Whale are not in this division.
Yes,
but
those are the ones that are already currently established within the league and run their own channels, and we wish them best of luck, both there and here, of course.
Yeah, I think one of the important players to also talk about is Rowan, just because we saw them quite a lot last season in substituting games. I think did quite well. That substitute buff was hitting different. And me personally, I'm going to be really interested to see how they perform actually in the league, playing every week by week and every single one of their points tracked to see if they can keep up that performance and get into B3.
Name that I'd heard of is Jinlong or Unlock. Joined the league. Definitely someone's been around, especially on the Mahjong Soul side for a while. Has been playing well. I've heard some good things. Looking to see how that turns out. And as I said, any other matchups specifically that jump out at you?
I mean, I think everyone's just so unknown that there's going to be a lot of really exciting, really interesting games, and we can't really tell yet.
I'll
It's
say
always hard when
Thomas.
all the new ones come.
Thomason's from Baltimore, so I'll definitely be watching, especially that Session 5 game between Thomason, Ian, Jocelyn, and Ray. Should be pretty exciting. But
I'll be keeping track of Tara a little bit. She's from Kathy's Club in Columbus, so being a Midwesterner and partnered with them before I moved, at least to the East Coast. Just kind of following some of the names I know.
Oh, then I got to talk about Ray, my goat, the second Nova Mahjonger to come in. Hoping she does really, really well this season. Also in that matchup, you mentioned earlier, Korok, I believe.
yes, figure we'll both be watching that one, although cheering for different people as can be expected. Little club rivalry, all that good
We can do
stuff.
a 1 and 2. You know, it's okay. I'm down for Tom to get 2. I'm all good with that.
All right. Again, because we just don't know too many of these players in and out, we can't really say all that much of the really hope for our respective clubs and players we do know to work out and have some great games regardless. So let's head to the new B3.
And I
feels-
mean, one of the first things I think I notice when I take a quick glance at yonder B3 division is Session 1, Table 3. We see those first two names there are Garth
No.
and Jin.
It's going to be an exciting game to get. The first time they faced off, maybe with each other ever. I'm not too hip to their records or their previous history in JPML. But definitely for here, that's going to be the first time they match up. I'm wondering if kind of knowing the general play style, or if they have any inkling to each other's general play style, or will kind of be able to play each other's games.
I
Both being
know.
used to that Japanese style.
I know
That's
they
much
talk to each
slower.
other a lot. I'm sure the ARML and just not being able to get out of B3 is something that is very likely animating both of them. Definitely trying to get a better season together here. But of course, yeah, that's obviously an amazing potential game. I believe there was one later on
I think
that looked pretty
Takahiro,
interesting.
Garth, Travis H, and Caesar in week 3 also. I was
Oh
looking
yeah,
at.
that sounds like a lot of fun. You get Takahiro, who again is another person we kind of expected to get out of B3, but this is a consistent thing. Getting out of the bottom division because you have such a wide range of players is very difficult. We saw two seasons ago, Alon did not manage to get out of the bottom division, was in the beta league last season, but did manage to get out. There's always an adjustment period because oftentimes you haven't played people, whether they're brand new players or just people who are simply better than you. And you have to be able to adjust and finagle and manage to get those wins where you can. All right, then. I guess we can go ahead and take a look at B2.
Yeah, and
B-
B2 is going to be pretty exciting this year as well, especially because with so many newly joining people this past season that we had the beta league, the some of the cream of the crop that were at the top there that did get into B2 are going to be up against people who have starting to be people who were here since the very beginning, and some people who dropped down from A2 and B1 that are going to be really strong players. So this is where the names are really, really starting to heat up.
And you're just going to see a bunch of varying play styles. One of the games that's jumping out at me is Andrew, Clinton, Stanley, and Alon in the second round. There could be some action there. I know Clinton's a pretty aggressive player, also tends to play at very strange hours. So that could definitely throw some people off. We'll see how that one goes. Any other games that jump out?
It'll be interesting to look at session 4, table 3. I know Eric from Chicago is a solid player, and we've also got Melissa and Kayla who both won their B3 divisions.
Of course, the player that has an online resume that everyone's going to be looking out for is Viet, a 7-dan we mentioned earlier. We'll definitely be looking to make a push towards B1 here with a bunch of online experience, specifically someone who has spent an enormous amount of time with the Mahjong bots and studying their logic of Naga and others.
No, yeah, Viet is a huge stat head. Anytime anyone's always like, what should I do here? What's the most optimal? Viet almost feels like they're lurking to just pull up the Naga scenario and see what the snake has to say.
Of course, there's this Kayla person who I mentioned earlier got 6th in DC. Tucker, you heard of this person?
Yeah,
It's a bit every season.
I taught her how to play Mahjong. And you know what? I'm really starting to think she's better than me at this point.
You have a couple divisions on her as of right now.
Yeah, as of now. What is it? 2 seasons till they can converge? That'd be funny.
That
I'm
would,
not praying on your downfall, but
that would be pretty tragic for me because I'm fairly confident she would win. But I have a little bit of bias cheering for Kayla in B2 this season for sure. I won't let it show on stream though, I promise.
And speaking of streamers, we also have Irie in this division, who did manage to move up from B3. So congratulations to Irie. Plenty of interesting games here. Anything anyone else has?
It'll also be fun. And Andrew Freeman is someone who's been around for a while. Took a hiatus, I believe, last season from ARML and is coming back into this new and very different A2. So it'll be fun to see just this random wild occultist being confronted with all of these very strong players that have just kind of come in out of nowhere.
And of course, our fellow commentator Blaine is in this division, managed to make it out of that playoff. So congratulations. Looking forward to a strong B2 season there as well. All right, let's take a look at B1.
Oh, this is gonna be a crazy volatile division. I'm guessing right now that it's either gonna be like every other B1 where everybody's close right towards the end and then it breaks away in session 6, or it's gonna have a huge swing. And it's gonna be like there are gonna be a couple players who just instantly gun for promotion and a couple players who just fall short and can't quite get out of the demotion.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at these names, like looking at table 4 in session 1. I mean, I is an incredible player. I don't know what I's Tinho rank is, but I know is Saint Plus in Mahjong Soul.
I is solid.
Yeah,
Very
I's an
solid.
incredible player. Like Bully is literally in their name, so you know they're good. Aldwin, who's been around for forever, that's Q. Isn't that there's 47 Wills and Williams? Isn't that Will Overlord Whale?
No, I think the Overlord Whale demoted last season was in B3. But no, there are a bunch of Wills and Williams.
There's
I'm
so
looking at
many.
Ada and Rachel, probably the two most volatile players in all of ARML, both here in B1. And you get some very hyper aggressive players like Mike McLeod and Edwin, the founder of ARML. This is going to be the action league.
Yeah, any time there's a table that has two of Ada, Rachel, and Michael, like those are games you're going to want to watch. Ada and Rachel facing each other in table 1, the very first session. That they also faced each other in the first session 2 seasons ago because I was at that table. But like anytime two of them are at the same table, it is going to be absolutely insane.
I think session 2, table 4 will be one to watch with Ada, Brian, and Edwin. Brian is a Michigan club member, and he's been playing for probably over a decade at this point. So a lot of experience there to combat the craziness that goes on.
Yeah, I believe Brian was a semifinalist at the Richinomi Open last summer. A very very cool, calm, collected mahjong style. It was very fun to play against.
I'm also kind of looking at session 4, table 6, with a bunch of veterans in there. Travis, Aldwin, Steven, and Edwin should be interesting. There may be some table dynamics there. It'll be a bit different from some of the other tables because they have, at least 3 of them I know have been around for quite a while. Let's see.
We've got a note in the chat here from Max that the Ada, Rachel, Jeff, Eric table is happening now.
Oh, fantastic!
If we weren't doing this, we'd be casting that one. But
actually, one of those games just ended literally right now, and Ada came in first and Rachel came in last. So talking about 2 players who are all over the place, and Ada was in 4th in East 4 of that game, but got a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be where if you're looking for exciting games, look for B1. Like, there's going to be some clashes going on here.
How do you feel about your chances, Mr. B2?
Jeez, Mr. B2 is real scared. I'm looking at every week and I'm thinking, man, that's gonna be a rough game. Man, that game's gonna be hard. I'm looking at all these names, some A2ers that I've seen for a while, just got into demotion, some big names that have done well, like around the scene, and I'm like, it's gonna be tough to jump up. I'm really feeling it. It's starting to set in, but we'll see how it goes. All you can do, just sign up, get on the table, and then just start scrapping, seeing if you can get on the positive end of things.
Yeah, I will be paying close attention to B1 because we've got 3 people from the Michigan club in here. Actually, Vikram, Brian, and Michael. So Michael L in this case.
All right, let's head to A2.
How many Michaels are there in Armel? A lot.
Oh, like
I think
not quite as many as
maybe
Will,
more.
but there's
yeah, I
a
think
lot
there
of
are 8 Wills and 5 Michaels.
Oh boy, A2.
Is A2 the first league we're seeing that's going to have a snake round in session 6?
They are. It's just the
No.
top 2 divisions. The top 2 divisions have so many more demotions, and you don't usually get the passes like we talked about in some of the lower ones, where if you're in the bottom 5, you're probably actually going down. So, I mean, we can look at this. And I mean, right off the bat, a table of Matthias, Claire, Alfred, and Pio. Alfred, one of the strongest players in B1 last season. And oh, by the way, Pio and Claire at the same table.
Don't worry, they're used to it.
Yeah, that's a normal Friday for them.
Yeah, there may be some side bets going on there with those 2. Let's see some other good ones. The session 3, some very aggressive players with Garrick, Andre, Pio, and Jonathan.
Yeah, that'll definitely be a very big game. Like lots of explosiveness at that table, which is kind of the opposite if you go exactly 1 table down. Beachin kind of like me is a more defensive player, so it's gonna be interesting to see how that lines up.
I mean, for your matches specifically, Tucker, that session 4 looks fun to watch and horrible to play in.
Yeah, I'm not. I actually like really prefer the more frightening the opponents are, the more I'm like, okay, I I might be able to guess what my opponents are thinking sometime.
I mean,
When
yeah.
there's
Oh, continue.
when there's a whole lot of nonsense going on, I just kind of get lost. Simon, I do believe, demoted, like when Steve was talking about shenanigans that happened in A1 2 seasons ago that made for the weird 21 division last year. It was Steve trying to just recklessly climb up for league champions as there was no hope of demoting, to try and catch Loose, who was hundreds and hundreds away. And that run actually ended up demoting Simon, who was pretty safe before then, right before Simon went on hiatus, and is entering back into the ARML into a pretty exciting A2 here.
And I talked in B1 about a match with veterans. Well, we have a very exciting one in that session 5 there at the very bottom. Simon, Beechin, Claire, and Sarah. I would love to cast that game.
That's gonna be a crazy game. Especially right at 5, right when like placements are gonna start to really, really matter and lines are gonna be almost completely defined. It's gonna be crazy.
There's no free pass there, even though Beechen plays more defensively. You give Beechen good tiles, and he's going to convert them.
Yeah, and he will also kill you with a very well-placed Dama. Like, Beechin can be rather sneaky at times as well.
Plenty of exciting games in A2. But, of course, that means there is one more division. Let's take a look at A1. Yeah, I think the obvious one is that one involving a couple of us here in the booth.
The
Right there on the second
27
line.
Dawn game.
Yeah, you have Steve, Max, me, and Matthew. Matthew's a 6 Dawn. The rest of those are 7 Dawn players. This is the high online ranked table. This is the highest we have ever had on ARML. And those will be Wednesday and Thursday of next week. I imagine they will very likely be broadcast. I think
On
the other
Wednesday
commentators
cast,
are
that's
talking
coming
about
up.
bare knuckle
Oh, yeah.
brawls.
Yeah, I called first dibs, so I will be there.
Yeah, I was
And
joking. I was joking in our chat earlier. That's the highest total Dawn you're going to see, unless one of us promotes to 8 Dawn, or Matthew promotes, or Viet climbs to A1 for at least the foreseeable future. So,
Yeah,
and then you have
we'll
to roll that
take-
combination of players because it's random.
Yeah, I imagine it will be many seasons before we can see a 28 Dawn game.
Well, I'll
That's for
say I'm
sure.
pretty worried about my own situation because then I get out of that mess, and then my week 2 is Nathaniel, Aaron, and Kathy. So it's
I
like,
mean,
okay, well, then it's at least maybe a little bit easier. Oh, wait, no, I have Kenyon in round 3 along with Andres and Vincent. So there are
That's
free
A1.
passes.
No free passes. All of these players are monsters. You're in the den right now. How you keep staying there, I have no idea. But that's just your fate. You're scared going into every week.
Yeah, I think it will be pretty balanced play. Then I look at my week 4 with Kenyon, Andrew, and Lucas, and I'm like, okay. It's kind of like not optimistic about that one compared to some of the others.
Well, hey, don't worry, y'all. I don't see either of your names in session 6, so you're probably safe there. I don't see any horrifying opponents yet for you in that session. So there's hope.
I'm just glad my name isn't off to the right this time.
Yeah, those 5-person tails is a special level of punishment. Now, if we don't have any hiatuses, we may have 2 of those next season, which will be absolutely terrible. But we'll see how that ends up. Regardless, there are no free passes. I look at this list. I think there's a very good chance I demote this season. I do not like the pairings I got, and you just don't have free games here. I say
But
I've
that's-
been
We're
the
going
model
from
of
4 to 3.
consistency. The model of consistency, and we've lost one all of every season until now, and of that list, the last couple seasons, because we lost Simon a couple seasons ago, and then lost Bishan last season. So if the pattern comes up, it's one of the four of us, and I've been the one close to the chopping block the most often. So I'm not feeling confident going in this season, but there will be 5 demotions. So all I have to do is get to 15th and I'm fine.
And that is part of what makes watching these A1 games so exciting. Since everybody here is at such a high level, that also means that everyone kind of has almost equal shots at getting that league champion or having to fight out of demotion, which even just fighting for the demotion ends up changing people's play styles. So you see a lot of very dynamic, very subtle play in A1, which is always particularly fun to watch as a viewer and cast as a commentator.
Well, one thing is, Joe, we talked about that 20% deal-in rate coming into this season, having done very well in A2. Well, Joe is already in a bunch of trouble right now. Even just 2 games in, we'll have plenty of time to make it back, but certainly in a rough position at minus 80.9. So we will see how that turns out. This is something we saw last season. Making that adjustment to A1 for some of these players is going to be difficult because you're going to get punished with a lot of stuff you may not have, even if you were building particularly efficiently earlier.
And that's all, but that is also part of the bouncing back and forth that can be nice. Is that if you go up to A1 and it's kind of a jarringly different play style than you're used to, and you end up falling out of it, you can always climb your way back there and you'll get back stronger for having gone through that process. So demotion is, I keep telling myself, pat on the head, not something to feel horrible about. It's just something to try and overcome eventually.
It's just one season. If you make it back, you have a chance to be back in 3 months. That's one of the big differences. We don't play as many games as the Japanese pro season would be in, but we have the flips of 3 months as opposed to 12. So you can definitely get back quickly if you get those results delivered. But yeah, just no free passes in A1 for anyone. It's going to be a dogfight there at the bottom. Any names for who you think may win this division?
Hopefully just not Kenyon. I'm
Well,
gonna be honest.
For
I
the
wanna
record,
see-
even if Kenyon comes in first, and this is an important thing to point out,
It's true.
if Kenyon comes in first, then it will be the player in second who secures the second spot at the league championship table at the end of the year. The same person can't sit in 2 seats, as much fun as that would be to watch. So even if Kenyon does get the first ever repeat as league champion, she will not, then have an extra spot at the table. It'll just go to whoever's second. I actually am. I'm going to blush a little and say Steve, since he's on the call. I don't want to put him on the spot because that feels bad to do to somebody. But I feel like Steve has had a couple of chances, and I feel like we're gonna see kind of like a bungee jump rebound up the ranks after the really unfortunate unflowful last season that Steve had. I think he has a really good shot to take this one.
And similar, I think the same thing for Zalong. Zalong played very well a few seasons and then was cruising or going into session 3 of last season, then just got demolished and was down there near the cut line towards the end. Managed to do enough to stay out of demotion range there at the very end, but did manage to survive. And again, if you're not playing for the championship, your only goal is to survive.
It's kind of hard not to bring up Ming Ko in the who could be the possible next champion as well. I mean, Ming Ko has
is
never
not
been
in
near
this
the
season.
bottom.
One of the two
Oh, he's
people on hiatus.
shoot! He's on hiatus. I didn't even. I was
Yeah,
just
we had
like
2
thinking to
hiatuses
myself,
this season, Minko and Ju. So those will not be playing this season. But
Hey,
I
well, this
mean,
is a
the
good chance
safe
to go
bet is
for
going to
it.
be Loose. Like it's been Loose and Kenyon near the top almost every season. And that's going to be my pick. There are plenty of other people who could get it. Honestly, anyone in A1 is good enough to win it. You just have to string all the games together, and it's so hard to do.
You know, I'm gonna have to go with the sleeper pick. I think I'm gonna go with Anthony on this one. I got a strong feeling. Listen, hear me out. Anthony just kind of stomped through, just kept killing every single division they were in, and then didn't even do that bad last season in A1, but couldn't get to the top. But I got a feeling, just needed to, acclimate a little bit. Needed to see how everybody was playing, what everybody was doing. And I have a strong feeling Anthony is going to have a very good showing this season.
Well, I have to say,
Oh.
when you say you want to predict that I'll win it, I was very happy to see that I was not playing Loose, because our play styles do not go together, and I always end up on the short side of it.
I
But
think
yeah,
I
my
managed to
finishes
dodge
have been
Anthony
second and
myself.
third, 2 different seasons.
Yeah, you think this is the one, Steve? You think you're going to be able to finally take that gold?
Who knows? It's 20 people and it's 20 games or 24 games. It's
Top one
you're
in
at the
any
you're at the
tournament,
you're at
especially without a
the whim of the
playoff.
tiles anyway.
Yeah, pick who other than you do you think might have a good shot this season then?
I mean, come on, you got to
I
say
honestly
Aaron,
kind of
former
want to give it.
clubmate.
I want to give it to Aaron or Max at that point, because they've both had some good showings as well. Just in terms of
Aaron,
play
who
styles I
won
see,
Max's
and
tournament, came in
Yeah.
first in Cincinnati.
I mean, Aaron's pretty much always been near the top. Aaron just has those insane runs and just giant value pushes that seem to always hit too, or at least hit enough of the time to where he is an insane threat on the table.
I
Does
see
currently
Max
have the highest
complaining
ever
that
score.
Steve feels pain having to give Max any credit. Well, don't worry, you can take his points and probably mine starting next week.
I mean, I owe him Daisanga and Sumo on his deal.
You turn that into a run so I don't have to pay anything? Thanks. All right, then. I think that's about it for A1. Just overall, the league continues to expand. We get so much action. The divisions are getting stronger. The American player base is getting stronger. And just people are learning, they're developing. We're seeing better efficiency, better value building, better defense. Just everything's on the way up, and that's what we're hoping for. That was what the league was founded to do, was make the American player base stronger. And I'd say it's been doing a pretty good job, because there are strong people out there and they're increasing. And it's at the point where even with 20 people in A1, I don't feel very safe anymore. Any closing thoughts from anyone else?
If this preseason show got you hyped for what's going on in the ARML and you'd like to look at joining for a future season, you can sign up at our homepage. That's americanreachy.org. If you want to see past casts that we have done of actual Mahjong games and not just us talking about theoretical Mahjong games that might happen in the future, visit our YouTube. That's at tinyurl.com/ARMLYT. Be sure to follow us here on Twitch and follow us on Twitter, and that's at American Reachy. All of those links you will also find in the Twitch chat. So be sure to browse all of those and follow us everywhere you can.
Yep, hit those bells too, get those notifications, make it super easier. Also, on the Twitch streams last season, for the first time, every single week we streamed on Wednesday. And this season, following this show, same thing's going down. So if you got any time on Wednesday, Probably around 5 p.m. PT, 8 p.m. EST is usually when we start, unless there are some earlier games. Tune on by. There'll be some mahjong for you. That's for sure.
Now, those are just the regular ones. We will stream games we find particularly interesting, assuming we can get a casting crew together. So that's why we need you to follow on Twitch or Twitter, is that's how you can get those notifications. And with that, I think that's about all for today. So let's look forward to a very exciting spring season here. And this is Korak along with Harrison, Steve, and Tucker for the American Reaching Mahjong League signing off. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care, everyone.